Hi folks, David Jamieson here, editor of Conter.co.uk. I just wanted a wee chat today about an article that many of you will have read in the Herald by Ian McWhirter, where he makes, I think, quite a coherent case for the idea that there may be a push behind the idea of Devo Max in Scotland in coming months and years. Now, many people in the independence movement tend to poo-poo this notion. You know, we've heard it all before: Gordon Brown, Devo Max, the vow. It never seems to amount to anything. But he makes, I think, a strong argument, which is that there's a certain convergence taking place between political figures, academics, people in the media, and so on. I mean, I think he cites Kenny McCaskill, of course, the Alba MP and a long-time supporter of Scottish independence. Neil Findlay, who's pushing a campaign for Devo Max in Scotland. That's the former Scottish Labour MSP. And also Professor Mitchell, long a commentator on constitutional affairs in Scotland and the UK, and widely regarded as something of an expert on these questions. All of whom have in common this call for a Devo Max option to break the deadlock of the independence question. And he also situates these statements in a wider political context, where I think he's broadly correct that the stalemate that does exist in Scotland's constitutional question has not been broken by the SNP leadership, and there doesn't seem to be a strategy to break it. I mean, it's quite stark that, for example, during her acceptance speech at Glasgow in the last Scottish elections just about a month ago, Nicola Sturgeon didn't mention independence in her victory speech. There hasn't been any substantive movement on various questions surrounding independence. Since the election, the issue seems to have gone very quiet. There's not been an attempt to fight for the mandate that the SNP's electoral victory, I think, undoubtedly represents. But you haven't seen that struggle that you did in 2016 and even the general election in 2015, and even to an extent after the 2019 general election, when the SNP advanced bills through the Parliament supporting independence. We've not seen anything like that yet. And partly that might be down to the pandemic and the SNP wanting to make it clear that they're dealing with that before they deal with the constitutional issue. But I do think that there's a wider malaise at play. In his article, McWhirter indicates what one of those issues is, which is everyone now knows after Brexit that there are new questions thrown up by a border which would need to exist between Scotland and England in the event that an independent Scotland became an EU member. And what McWhirter argues in his article is that the SNP know these problems but simply refuse to address them, and I think that's fair also. Where I disagree with McWhirter's article is that he finishes it basically on the note of that this is a rational option or a genuine or legitimate democratic outcome to the current impasse. At least that's what I take from the argument. And I have to say I disagree with that. I mean, I think that the character of the forces that you broadly see aligned behind this push tells you that basically it's a managerial effort by relatively elite layers in society, MPs, like I say, academics, media personalities. We had an excellent article on the website recently by George Kerrivan, where he reviews some of the literature proposing a federal option for the UK. The article, I think, is called Brexit, Federalism and the Intellectuals, where he identifies the interests of elite sections of society in this federal model. It's often presented as a kind of, can we finally put this issue of independence to bed? It's a kind of consensus option and so on. I have to say I'm generally suspicious of consensus options. You know, who represents that consensus? Because it's not like in Scotland, there's a huge push among the population for this so-called Devo Max or federal or whatever you want to call it option. It's very much a talking point among that thin layer of politicos and academics and media personalities who sort of metabolize these kind of ideas and represent them every couple of years. But I don't think that means that people in the independence movement shouldn't take this very seriously. And I think that the big issue here is the stagnation of the independence movement, particularly in its leadership, where answers to serious questions are not forthcoming. There doesn't appear to be a coherent strategy or way forward on Scottish independence. And that leaves the way open, first for this kind of managerial, if you like, push for a Devo Max option, this kind of technocratic push to solve political disagreements at the level of sort of state bureaucracy, which is a typical kind of approach from elite sections of society to try and wind down social conflicts and stop them causing problems in the general function and reproduction of society. I mean, I dare say if similar elements had the foresight, they might have proposed some kind of halfway house on Brexit before the 2016 vote, in the hope that it would have seen off the threat and the destabilization of the state. That's something that's in the interests of certain layers in society, but I'd argue not in the interests of the population at large. But as I say, the major problem here rests within the independence camp. And it's not that we should be running scared of a few MPs and academics and people like Gavin Esler writing books bemoaning the state of contemporary Britain and proposing this federal option. The real worry that we need to have is that the British state will eventually take this up. And I think that's a real danger. So let's say there's a few more years of wrangling over the question of an independence referendum. What's to stop the British government proposing a 3-option referendum where some kind of Devo Max option is in there to basically split the yes vote and create that kind of manufactured national consensus? Nothing. I mean, if someone like Gove offers that and the SNP are to say no, the UK government's more or less off the hook. They can hold up their hands and say, we offered, they turned us down. And as Ian McWhirter makes the point in his article, the people who've laid the ground for this are the SNP leadership, and not just Nicola Sturgeon, but Alex Salmond as well. Because it was Alex Salmond who said that what he was looking for was not national independence in a ruptural sense, simply a recasting of the UK. Some advocates of federalism are now describing it as independence in the UK, which is the kind of language that Salmond deployed, this idea of a kind of incremental approach to Scottish independence. And then after Salmond's, the present SNP plan for independence retains so much of the current British state settlement, and that's very much on purpose. That's the kind of don't scare the horses approach. But obviously, we'd retain the Crown, we'd retain Starling and the Bank of England and regulations set in the City of London and NATO and so much else that makes up the current constitutional settlement. So you can see that there's an element of the leadership element in the independence movement has really laid down the ground for this stuff. But as I say, if what you want from the Scottish independence question is some kind of new democratic dispensation, some kind of rupture from the way that things have been done heretofore, I think this is a very serious threat, and people in the independence movement need to take it seriously and propose arguments and strategies and solutions that break through the impasse on our terms and not on the terms of the British state establishment or the British government or sort of elite layers in society. So those are my quick thoughts on that. If you agree or you disagree or you have something else to say, please post that below or send it to editor@conter.co.uk if you have a more lengthy argument to make about this. Also, if you visit conter.co.uk, you can find George's article that I referenced. I think it's a really good read. He really draws out some of the dynamics in play in this debate. So I head over there and I look forward to speaking to you all again soon.